This past week, we got a major update to a KMBC9 investigation. Kansas' top cop is on his way out. The Highway Patrol Superintendent, Colonel Herman Jones, is retiring in July. We've been watching his story for nearly 3 years now. KMBC9 Investigates uncovered allegations of harassment, retaliation, and wrongful termination from former and current KHP employees. Allegations Jones claims had nothing to do with his decision to step down.
It was truly me. I decided it's time to move on for the good of myself, my family, and everything like that. Those are allegations. The truth comes through the court systems.
Earlier this year, some Republican state lawmakers started demanding an investigation into Jones and KHP. And as we discussed here on the program, some politicians even pitched giving the power of picking the head of the state police to the state attorney general instead of the governor. So what happens now? Here to discuss this and other major stories making headlines, please welcome back Brian Ellison, host contributor with KCUR, and KMBC9 political reporter Michael Mahoney. All right, gentlemen, the governor's office did put out a statement after this big announcement saying essentially we wish him well in his future endeavors and his retirement, right? Republicans had turned up the heat, though, on KHP and its leadership. Do you think it was forced down here?
Well, I think the Republicans think that they got their pound of flesh out of this thing. One of the leaders of this movement to try and switch the Highway Patrol over to the Attorney General's office, State Senator J.R. Clay, told Matt Fleener over in Topeka the fact that Colonel Jones is leaving satisfied him in terms of maybe there was no longer a need for the switch to be made from the Highway Patrol being part of the governor's cabinet and putting it under control of the Attorney General. So we'll see. But Senator Clays is one of the major moving factors behind the idea of stripping it out of the governor's office and putting it in the AG's office.
Right. Still have a Democratic governor, though. So who knows?
Right. It's sort of an interesting episode, really, when you think about it. The governor went with this choice in 2019, stood by him even as the lawsuit alleging harassment came in, even as the allegations of retaliation against officers who had stood with those who filed the lawsuit came out, and even to the end, does not say that she fired him, thanked him for his service. He says he retired, and he's going to stay on the job till July and get paid out his full retirement benefits once that starts.
You mentioned the court system because there were still lawsuits. Our KMBC9 investigation will continue there. Let's go to Missouri because we saw earlier in the week a protest for what's being dubbed a Don't Say Gay bill, essentially outlawing teachers from even talking about sexual orientation or gender identity. Opponents say it's much more broad of a bill than what we saw passed in Florida.
Yeah, and that seems to be the case. In fact, the state senator from the Kansas City area, Greg Razor, who is gay, says that this particular bill being run by Senator Mike Moon is the most disrespectful piece of legislation that Razor says he has seen in his years down in Jefferson City. He's quite unhappy about this and thinks that it's just part of a collection of measures that they're trying to pass targeting the LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah, just one of many bills.
That's right, and it's not clear what the future of that bill is, by the way. It got a hearing in the Senate Education Committee, but they took no vote. It had a lot of pushback from Democrats in particular, but even some concerns more broadly that it's too vague, that maybe it wouldn't allow even heterosexual teachers to talk about their spouses because it says no conversation about sexual orientation. But there are other bills, as you say. There's concerns about drag shows. There's concerns about books in school libraries. So this is part of a trend. Missouri has more laws under consideration than almost any other state that take particular aim at the LGBTQIA plus community. It will be interesting to see what happens and how many of those Democrats are able to stop in the Senate with their filibuster power and how many they're able to make changes to, but perhaps still see pass.
I want to mention this because last month we heard Governor Parsons state at the state address, and one of the big earmarks from that was we're going to widen I-70, right? We're going to make that better for the corridor. That plan now seems to be potentially in jeopardy, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't have anything to do specifically with the funding for the project, although a lot of people think that the $800 and almost $1 billion is a pretty high price tag. This has to do with an unrelated lawsuit dealing with the ability of the Missouri Department of Transportation to give raises to some of their people, and so there are some members of the legislature that are very critical of the administration of MoDOT right now, and they're trying to link these two things together. It remains to be seen what happens with this.
And it reflects a reality about the legislative process in Missouri that even major initiatives that get a lot of attention, a lot of positive attention, sometimes can go down in flames when one legislator has a real concern that they aren't able to come together and resolve.
And we saw gridlock last year in Missouri. Hopefully, well, we'll see what happens, I guess. We'll leave it there for now, right? Brian Ellison, Michael Mahoney, thank you so much.